Stoicism is a school of ancient Greek philosophy in the Socratic tradition. It was founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium around 301 BC. The name comes from the painted porch, Stoa Poikili, where Zeno lectured his students. Stoicism later became very popular in ancient Rome, where it continued to flourish long after the disappearance of the original Greek school. Less than 1% of the Stoics' original writings now survive, however. The most important ancient sources that survive today are 1. The many letters, essays, and dialogues of the Roman statesman Seneca, who was advisor to the Emperor Nero. 2. The handbook and 4 surviving books of Epictetus's Discourses, compiled from his lectures by a student called Arrian. Epictetus, a Greek ex-slave, is the only Stoic teacher whose thought survives in book form. 3. The Meditations, a private Stoic notebook or diary of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was strongly influenced by Epictetus. In the Stoic Week Handbook, we have included quotations from all 3 thinkers, especially Marcus Aurelius, who himself expresses Stoic ideas in a distinctively brief and eloquent form, which many people find very powerful. We think that Marcus wrote his meditations as morning or evening reflections to help provide philosophical support for himself in an intensely busy and demanding life as emperor and general. In the 17th century, Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 3rd Earl of Shaftesbury, wrote his own Stoic journal closely based on the Meditations and Epictetus's Discourses, available in print today as the Philosophical Regimen. Stoic Week gives you a chance to follow a similar routine to Marcus each day. You might like to write down your own morning and evening meditations and keep them in a notebook, or share them with other people through social networks. You can base your personal meditations on the topics suggested, or use other Stoic ideas that you have learnt about and find helpful. Some people choose to read Marcus's meditations during Stoic Week, although this is optional. There are recent translations in paperback and e-book formats from Oxford World's Classics and Penguin. Another translation of books 1 to 6 of the Meditations, Oxford Universe Press, 2013, provides a full introduction and commentary by Professor Christopher Gill, one of the founders of Stoic Week. We hope that the Stoic Week Handbook provides as much help and support to you as Marcus found by writing his meditations. What is Stoicism? How might it help us to live better, happier lives today? Some of you will be drawn to this experiment because you already know a little bit about Stoicism and want to put it into practice for yourselves. Others may know very little about Stoicism and are curious to learn more. The ancient Stoic philosophical system was well known for being vast and complex, addressing a wide range of topics under the headings of ethics, logic, and physics. It will be impossible to introduce it all, but here are 3 central ideas at the heart of Stoic ethics. 1. Virtue. The Stoics argued that the most important thing in life, and the only thing with real value, is virtue, by which they meant excellence of character. The core virtues for the Stoics were wisdom, especially moral or practical wisdom, justice encompassing both kindness and fairness, or wisdom applied to our relationships, courage or fortitude, i.e., mastery over our fears, moderation or temperance, i.e., mastery of our desires. Wisdom is the most important virtue to Stoics, and all other virtues are seen as a form of practical wisdom. The virtues of courage and moderation are the forms of Stoic self-control required to live consistently with wisdom and justice, especially when beset by challenges from without and unruly desires and emotions from within. Epictetus's famous slogan, "Endure and renounce," appears to refer to these 2 virtues of self-mastery. However, Stoic virtue needs to be understood quite broadly in terms of ethical principles, as well as having a good character and good attitudes toward other people. Virtue is not just a matter of what's going on in your head, but also of what's going on in your family and social relations, your intentions, your actions, and your pattern of life as a whole. From another perspective, Stoic virtue refers to the perfection of our own nature, like an acorn growing into an oak tree. We have the capacity for wisdom, and virtue consists in fulfilling that potential within ourselves. Virtue ultimately entails living in accord with our own nature as rational beings, but also in harmony with the rest of mankind and in agreement with nature as a whole. In practice, that means facing difficult people and physical hardships with good grace, patience, and equanimity. The central Stoic claim was that virtue is ultimately the only thing that really matters. It is the only thing that is truly good, and it is the only thing that can bring us well-being and fulfillment. The Stoics also believed that we are naturally inclined to recognize the overriding value of virtue, and that we are born with an instinctive wish to benefit others and to express this in social involvement. From this natural basis, we may come to see the bond between ourselves and all human beings. Conversely, the Stoics claimed that all those external things that people often pursue, a good job, money, success, fame, etc., cannot guarantee us happiness. They could well be parts of a happy life, but on their own, they will never deliver genuine fulfillment unless we also have the virtues. The Stoics refer to everything external to our own character as indifferent in terms of attaining the good life. This term causes some confusion, but you could simply think of it as meaning not worth getting upset about. Some morally indifferent things are to be preferred or rejected, that is, they're lightly sought or avoided, with the reservation that the outcome is never absolutely under our control. Hence, the Stoics said it is rational and indeed wise for us to prefer having these things in life within reason. It is just that personal fulfillment depends ultimately on developing virtue, rather than on having the opportunity to acquire these external things, which is always partly in the hands of fate. In the popular imagination, a Stoic is someone who denies or represses their emotions in a potentially unhealthy way, like a robot or Mr. Spock from Star Trek. However, this is definitely a misconception, albeit a very widespread one. The central Stoic claim was that our emotions are ultimately the product of the judgments that we make. It is because we think external events are what really matters that we feel anger or fear. As we get a better understanding of what really matters and what is up to us, then these unhealthy or irrational emotions will be replaced by healthy, rational ones. In short, as we develop ethically and as we see the absolute value of virtue, our emotional life will change for the better, in the same way that faulty value judgments lead to unhealthy emotions and desires. So too will wise judgments lead to rational and healthy ones. For example, the Stoics claimed there were 3 broad categories of good desires and emotions that are part of a happy and fulfilled life and which naturally follow as a consequence of developing virtuous attitudes. Our true inner nature, which they believe to consist in our capacity for reason. 2. The nature of society and our relationship with the rest of mankind. 3. The nature of our external environment as a whole, the universe around us. The Stoics believed that leading a life with virtue as your goal is the natural way for a human being to live. They encourage us to see that if we create a wholeness and coherence of moral character in ourselves, we are matching the coherence and unity that they see in the world as a whole. By contrast, the foolish and vicious person is perpetually divided from his own true nature, in conflict with other people, and alienated from the world around him. By contrast, the Stoics also encourage us to see ourselves as integral parts of nature and part of a greater whole. Today, many human beings are aware that they need to think more about the impact of human actions on the natural environment and to see themselves within the context of nature. The Stoic worldview can help us develop this attitude. For the Stoics, our life cycle from birth to death is but one infinitesimal part of life in nature, and realizing this can help us accept every event, including our own death and that of others, with equanimity. Taking a broader and more objective perspective on life was part of what the Stoics meant by studying nature, physics, but it is also something that can help transform our personality in a moral and therapeutic sense. As noted already, virtue is not just a matter of your state of mind, but of how you relate to other people. The Stoics believe that most species of animals, and especially the human species, are naturally sociable in character. We naturally form attachments and we naturally live in communities. From this natural affection stems the Stoic ideal of the community of humankind. As Marcus Aurelius writes, we were born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. So to work in opposition to one another is against nature, and anger or rejection is opposition. Meditations. If you are going to follow Stoic Week, then you should attempt to be open toward Stoicism and these three central ideas about value, emotions, and nature. You don't need to accept them uncritically, but you do at least need to be prepared to explore them further, and if you are going to follow Stoic Week, then you should attempt to be open toward Stoicism and these three central ideas about value, emotions, and nature. Our aim in this project is not to try to convince you of the truth of these claims, but simply to see if they are helpful for you in the way you lead your life. If these key ideas seem completely absurd to you, then it may be that Stoic Week is not the right experiment for you. Each day in Stoic Week has its own central theme, and these themes build upon one another as the week progresses, making the whole week, potentially, the beginning of a deeper journey into Stoicism. Take some time out at midday each day or any time that suits you to reflect on the day's theme and how it might shape the various activities in which you are engaged. There are also morning and evening meditations, which you should try to practice at the beginning and end of each day. Let's now explore these two exercises in more detail. When you wake up each morning, take a few moments to compose yourself and then patiently rehearse the day ahead, planning how you can make yourself a better person while also accepting that some things lie beyond your control. 1. Marcus Aurelius talks about walking on your own to a quiet place at daybreak and meditating upon the stars and the rising sun to prepare for the day ahead. You can also do this at home, sitting on the end of your bed or standing in front of the mirror in your bathroom, and still think of the sun rising against a backdrop of stars. 2. Pick a specific philosophical principle that you want to rehearse and repeat it to yourself a few times before imagining how you could put it into practice during the rest of the day. You might choose the key general Stoic theme. Some things are under our control whereas others are not, and to think about giving more importance to being a good person, acting well, and treating things you cannot control as ultimately much less important. 3. Alternatively, you might pick a specific virtue that you want to cultivate in order to prepare yourself mentally for your day ahead. For example, imagine in broad outline how you would act if you showed more wisdom, justice, courage, or moderation. 4. Practice this meditation for about 5 to 10 minutes, picking out key events or specific challenges that might arise. Once you've gotten into the habit of doing this, try imagining greater challenges in the day ahead, such as some of your plans not going as you hope or dealing with difficult people. As you consider a possible difficulty, think about how you could tackle it with a Stoic principle or virtue. Say to yourself for our purposes, at night before going to sleep, take 5-10 minutes to review the events of your day, picturing them in your mind if possible. It's best if you can do this before actually getting into bed, where you might begin to feel drowsy rather than thinking clearly. You may find it helpful to write notes on your reflections and self-analysis in a journal, documenting your journey as you learn to apply Stoic practices in daily life. Try to remember the order in which you encountered different people throughout the day, the tasks you engaged in, what you said and did, and so on. Ask yourself the following or similar questions. 1. What did you do badly? Did you allow yourself to be ruled by fears or desires of an excessive or irrational kind? Did you act badly or allow yourself to indulge in irrational thoughts? 2. What did you do well? Did you make progress by strengthening your grasp of the virtues? Praise yourself and reinforce what you want to repeat. 3. What could you do differently? Did you omit any opportunities to exercise virtue or strength of character? How could you have handled things better? As Seneca puts it, by asking yourself these questions, you are adopting the role of a friend and wise advisor toward yourself, rather than a harsh or punitive critic. Criticize your specific actions rather than yourself as a person in general, and focus on ways in which you can improve. We can probably assume that a Stoic whose self-analysis and review of the preceding day leads him to conclude he has erred in his judgment, acted badly, or failed to follow his principles, would seek to learn from this and act differently the following day. When you wake up the next day, you'll find it natural to base your morning meditation on your reflections before going to sleep the previous night. These meditations combine to form a learning cycle as you plan how to live and act more wisely. Put this into practice during the day, and then reflect on the outcome after. Modern research-based psychotherapy advises that you'll need to be cautious to avoid reflection turning into morbid rumination. Don't dwell too long on things or go around in circles. Rather, try to keep a practical focus and arrive at clear decisions if possible. If you are not able, then set your thoughts aside and return to them in the morning. There are many hidden aspects to this exercise, which will become clearer as you progress in your words, leading to the same cycle the following day. Studies of Stoicism. For example, bearing in mind that the past is beyond your ability to change, you might want to use this review to adopt an attitude of provisional acceptance of your own failings, forgiving yourself while resolving to behave differently in the future. Hence, as Seneca emphasizes when describing his use of the same evening routine, we should not be afraid of contemplating our mistakes because as Stoics we can say, beware of doing that again, and this time you may find it helpful to make use of a self-monitoring record. This will help you keep a record of behaviors you'd like to stop, such as dwelling on negative thoughts and actions you might later regret. If you feel you've not got time to do this, don't worry, it's optional. However, keeping a record is one of the things that previous participants in Stoic Week told us they found particularly helpful to do. Pardon you. This process is not just about record keeping. It's about pausing, taking a step back from things, and gaining what therapists call psychological distance from your initial upsetting thoughts and feelings. It will help you to become a detached observer of yourself for a while. Write things down as soon as possible. Doing so will help you to view your thoughts in this detached way, observing events and describing them in an objective manner. Date, time, event. Note the date and time of the event, when you started to feel angry or afraid, for example. Briefly describe the actual situation you were facing, e.g., perhaps someone criticized your work, or maybe someone offered you some junk food while you were trying to lead a healthy life. The feelings, what emotions or desires did you actually experience? The Stoics use the technical term passions for both. Remember, we're only interested in feelings that might be considered irrational in the sense of being misguided and negative. Following on from our examples above, you might write down that you felt excessively anxious or angry about being criticized, or that you felt a strong craving to eat junk food which you found hard to resist. Remember that you're also trying to catch these feelings early, so try to note early warning signs, which are often sensations such as trembling when afraid, or thoughts such as telling yourself just one won't hurt when you're tempted to eat something unhealthy. 3. Thoughts. What related thoughts went through your mind? Stoic psychology held that our emotions and desires fundamentally depend upon our thoughts, particularly our value judgments. Be forewarned that most people find it difficult at first to identify the specific thoughts that are responsible for their feelings. You'll probably need to work on this, but with practice and study, it should become easier. Were you telling yourself that something external is very good, desirable, or bad, upsetting? For example, someone who feels anxious and angry about being criticized might come to realize that they're thinking, "I must be respected at work," and placing great importance or intrinsic value on other people's opinions of them, instead of wanting to do their job well for its own sake. Or control. As we'll see, this is the central question that Stoics use to evaluate their impressions. Is it up to me? They meant, is this the thing that my feelings are about, under my direct control? Again, don't worry too much about this for your first day or so, because as you learn more about Stoicism, you'll get better at posing this question. For example, you might observe that other people's opinions of you are ultimately beyond your direct control. All you can control in this situation is your response to their words and perhaps your plans for how to act in the future. Even your previous failings are no longer within your power to change. You can't rewrite the past. This distinction between what is up to us and what is not is crucial for Stoics, as you'll see. They urge us to serenely accept those things in life we cannot change, while taking full responsibility for bringing our own voluntary actions into line with our moral principles. Just write a few words here summing up your analysis of the situation in terms of which aspects you do or do not control. Alternatively, rate how much control you have over the aspects of the situation that upset you on a rough subjective scale from 0–100%. However, we'll need to explore this question more carefully in the following parts of the course. 5. Actions. In this situation, how far did your actions actually match your ethical principles? Did you act in a way which matches your understanding of virtue that was wise, just, courageous, and temperate? Or did you act in a way that was marked by foolishness, unfairness, cowardice, and self-indulgence? Think about how you treated other people and not just how your actions affected you, since that is an essential part of virtue. You might want to rate how consistent your actions were with your core values, or definition of virtue, on a rough percentage scale from 0–100% theme, Stoicism, and love. Men have come into being for one another, so either educate them or put up with them. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, 859. Each year, Stoic Week will have a different overarching theme. This year, the theme is Stoicism and love. People often assume that Stoicism is rather unemotional, and it may come as a surprise to them to realize that natural affection, philostorgia, for others was the basis of Stoic ethics. You can think of this as related to other concepts such as love and especially friendship. Marcus described the ideal Stoic as free from unhealthy, irrational passion and yet full of love. Meditations 1.9. Musonius Rufus said that a Stoic philosopher ideally displays love for his fellow human beings, as well as goodness, justice, kindness, and concern for his neighbor. Lectures 14. Living in harmony and friendship with other people appears to be part of what the Stoics meant by living in agreement with nature. Although compared to our present reality, this may be something of a distant utopian ideal. The cardinal virtue that relates most directly to our interaction with other people is justice. For Stoics, justice is a form of social or moral wisdom. It consists of two main elements: kindness or benevolence toward others, too. Treating others fairly and impartially. Seneca explained that, for a Stoic, the virtue called justice requires him to count his friend as dear as himself, to think that an enemy can be turned into a friend, to rouse love in the former and temper hatred in the latter. Letters 95. Although this was a moral and philosophical ideal, the Stoics also developed practical, detailed psychological guidance to help us progress toward it. For example, Marcus Aurelius wrote down a list consisting of 10 pieces of advice he gave himself about dealing with difficult people with kindness, fairness, and natural affection in accord. Remember the fundamental kinship between yourself and the rest of mankind, and think of yourself as having come into being for the sake of each other as members of the global community of mankind. We call this Stoic cosmopolitanism. 2. Think of the character of the other person as they are in other areas of life, such as eating meals, going to sleep, etc. Bear in mind the harm their own behavior does to them. 3. If what they're doing is right, you've no reason to complain, but if it's not right, they don't really understand what they're doing. Notice that most people are shocked if they're accused of doing wrong. 4. Remember that you're not perfect yourself, and sometimes do the wrong thing, or upset people. Or if you don't do so often, you at least have the potential to do so in certain situations. You can never be absolutely certain what they're doing is wrong anyway. People's real motives are often hidden from you, and not what they seem. 6. When you're angry with others, remind yourself that all things are transient, and especially that both of you are mortal and will soon be gone and ultimately forgotten anyway. 7. Prevent yourself from thinking of things other people do or say as insults by realizing that, fundamentally, you have been done no harm. Your moral character cannot be damaged by other people's actions. 8. Know that our own anger and frustration harm us more than they harm the person they're directed toward. 9. Teach yourself that genuine kindness toward others can be a powerful force, and that, as long as it's sincere, with patient perseverance, even stubborn people can be won over. Speak to people carefully and without any trace of sarcasm or hostility, and they will often respond. 10. Most importantly, bear in mind that it's naive to expect everyone in the world to be perfect, and that most people are bound to do foolish and vicious things from time to time. The wise man knows this and prepares for it in advance, accepting difficult encounters with other people as an inevitable part of life. Marcus also repeats similar advice to himself in Meditations 9:42. He's clearly approaching the issue of interpersonal conflict very systematically and drawing on Stoic teachings in doing so. If you prefer something simpler, by contrast, Epictetus gave his students the very laconic advice to tell themselves it seemed right to them. When dealing with difficult people, Stoics should treat others with affectionate kindness, which means wishing that they would become wise and virtuous. However, we must do so while simultaneously accepting that the behavior of other people is beyond our direct control. Stoic love and friendship are therefore not demanding of reciprocation. The Stoic is kind and affectionate because it's virtuous, not because he hopes to gain something by being nice to other people. Indeed, the ability to treat others with friendship, even when they don't do the same in return, is something we generally praise and admire in other people. Come on, let us see now if thou canst love disinterestedly. Thanks, my good kinsman, brother, sister, friend, for giving me so generous a part that I can love though not beloved. Shaftesbury, The Philosophical Regimen, p. 108. Keep returning to this advice throughout your week of Stoic practices. We will touch on the theme of Stoicism and love in various places, particularly in the chapter on relationships from Maximus. I have learnt the importance of these things. To be master of oneself and not carried this way and that. To be cheerful under all circumstances, including illness. A character with a harmonious blend of gentleness and dignity, readiness to tackle the task in hand without complaint, the confidence everyone had that whatever he said he meant and whatever he did was not done with bad intent, never to be astonished or panic-stricken, and never to be hurried or to hang back or be at a loss or downcast or cringing, or on the other hand angry or suspicious, to be ready to help or forgive, and to be truthful. To give the impression of someone whose character is naturally upright rather than having undergone correction. The fact that no one could have thought that Maximus looked down on him, or could have presumed to suppose that he was better than Maximus, and to have great personal charm. Marcus Aurelius. We begin our first day by thinking about two Stoic themes that are central to the first book of Marcus Aurelius' philosophical journal, the Meditations. One is the idea that our whole life should be seen as an ongoing project or journey of ethical self-development. The other is that on this journey, we can improve our own development by reflecting on the good qualities and ways of life of the people who mean most to us. The word philosophy literally means love of wisdom. The Stoics can be viewed as taking this quite literally. Wisdom is the central virtue of Stoicism, and the Stoics love virtue, in themselves and others, above all else. In the morning text quoted above, Marcus thinks about what he learnt about wisdom and virtue from Maximus, an older family friend who was a leading politician with deep philosophical interests. He focuses on Maximus's integrity of character, his emotional balance, his genuineness and ease in dealing with other people. All qualities valued by Stoicism, whose basis will become clear in the coming week. An important feature of Stoic theory lies behind Book 1 of Marcus's Meditations. It is the idea that human life, if lived properly, is an ongoing project or journey directed towards the best possible human condition, that of wisdom. There are two strands to this journey. One is individual and the other social. At an individual level, we can learn to move from an instinctive desire for such things as self-preservation, health, and property, towards wanting to live in the best possible way. For the Stoics, this means living according to the virtues of wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. The culmination of this strand is recognizing that virtue is the only thing that is fundamentally of value and the only real basis for happiness and fulfillment. The second strand concerns our relations to other people. The Stoics thought that human beings and other animals are instinctively drawn to care for others of their kind, most obviously to love and care for their children. However, as human beings develop, we deepen and extend this instinct of care, forming lasting family and community commitments, and coming to recognize that all human beings are our brothers and sisters, since they are, like us, rational creatures capable of ethical development. The Stoics also thought that these two strands of development go hand in hand and support each other. All individuals are capable of developing in this way, regardless of their inborn characters and social background. However, this progress does not just happen automatically. You need to work at it, otherwise it can go very wrong. Marcus uses his regular note-taking and reflection, the meditations, to help this process of development, which he often describes as his real job or work as a human being. For instance, in tomorrow's morning text for reflection. In Book 1, he thinks about his whole life. This collaboratively, you could use the online discussion forums or Facebook page. Think too about the people who have helped you appreciate the importance of these qualities. They might be family members, close friends or partners, work associates, or people you do not know directly but whom you respect and admire. You might like to make notes or pictures on this, and also to chart links between specific individuals and the qualities you have come to value. This affection for others and deep admiration for the signs of wisdom and virtue they exhibit can be viewed as one aspect of what it means for Stoics to love wisely. You might like to contemplate the virtues of others at one sitting or space it through the day, while you are doing other things. Like most of the exercises we suggest, it can be useful to come back to it as the week progresses and see how your thinking has developed on these topics. Let us go to our sleep with joy and gladness. Let us say, I have lived. The course which fortune set for me is finished. And if God is pleased to add another day, we should welcome it with glad hearts. That man is happiest and is secure in his own possession of himself, who can await the morrow without apprehension. When a man has said, I have lived, every morning he arises, he receives a bonus. Seneca, morning. Read today's morning text. Mentally prepare for your day ahead by imagining how you might act, more like your role models in life, and share similar virtues in the face of the events you're about to face. 2. Midday. Practice writing your own philosophical journal like Marcus Aurelius. Focus on writing down the virtues you admire in others and which you aspire to embody in your own life. Use writing as an opportunity to clarify the qualities you admire, and think of it as an opportunity to contemplate them more deeply than normal. 3. Evening. Read today's evening text. Reflect on how things went today, what you may have done badly, what you did well, and what you could do differently in the future. Imagine being your own Stoic life coach and try to counsel yourself with wisdom and affection. You may find this additional piece of advice helpful. The Stoics appear to have repeated certain key phrases or maxims to themselves in order to memorize them and have them constantly ready to hand, especially in the face of a crisis. Epictetus told his students to repeat various statements to themselves mentally. Some of these are of a general nature, whereas others are things Stoics were told to say in response to specific emotional challenges. For instance, you are just an impression and not at all the thing you claim to represent, and this is nothing to me, in response to troubling thoughts. When someone acted in a way that might be upsetting or objectionable, Epictetus told his students to say, it seemed right to him, and hence the Stoic literature is full of brief, laconic phrases, memorable sayings that are eminently quotable, but also helped Stoics to commit key philosophical ideas to memory as a way of coping with adverse circumstances. Indeed, when someone complained to Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, that these philosophical sayings were too condensed, he replied that they were supposed to be concise, and that if he could, he'd abbreviate the sound of the syllables as well. Having these thoughts always at hand, and engrossing yourself in them when you are by yourself, and making them ready for use, you will never need anyone to comfort and strengthen you. Epictetus, Discourses 324. Here are some examples of typical Stoic sayings. derived from the classical literature. In some cases, they've been modified very slightly to make them more suitable for use as affirmations. When you repeat them, try to contemplate their meaning, or if you prefer, imagine that you're rehearsing what it would be like to really accept them and believe in these principles completely. Today and tomorrow, we focus on themes that are important for the meditative practices we are recommending in this handbook. These themes have parallels in some modern psychotherapeutic methods, but they also have a firm basis in Stoic writings and practices. The themes for today and tomorrow are expressed with special force in Marcus's Meditations 1.7, which was ultimately based on the writings of Epictetus. Marcus was greatly influenced by Epictetus, and these themes form the basis of his own meditative approach. Today we think about two important, linked Stoic themes: distinguishing between what is and is not in our power, and wishing with reservation. Both of these themes follow from the ideas about human development outlined yesterday. Stoics believe that all of us can and should work at taking forward our own ethical development by learning how to act virtuously and by broadening and deepening our relationships with other people. This is something that is up to us, or within our power as rational beings. However, there are many things we cannot determine by our own actions, such as whether we become rich or famous, whether we get ill, or whether close family members die. Stoics believe that what is up to use or within our power is of ultimate importance in our lives rather than the things that we cannot control. Although they recognize that it is natural for us to prefer being healthy or well-off, for example, Stoics regard these things as being of fundamentally less value than virtue. They also believe that recognizing the distinction between what is and is not within our power is crucial for leading a good human life, and one that is free from passions or negative and destructive emotions. For this reason, when we form wishes about things that are not wholly within our power, we should wish with reservation or with a reserve clause, a caveat such as if nothing prevents it. Otherwise, our plans and wishes are not based on the realities of human life and may lead to frustration and disillusionment. Epictetus expresses the distinction between what is and is not in our power very clearly in this passage. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, social role or status, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Epictetus, Handbook. He also points out that if we focus our wishes and desires on things that are not wholly within our power, such as health, wealth, and social status, this will lead to disappointment and negative emotions. Handbook 2. This distinction is important for Marcus too, as is clear in these two passages. Try out how the life of a good person suits you. Someone who is pleased with what is allocated from the whole and satisfied with his own just actions and kind disposition.